I think we will slowly start. If people will join, Malus will let them in. So let's start and welcome everybody. Put off my webcam, focus on the webinar. Welcome to the webinar Storm-1811 Defending Against. So first start with a slide that makes our marketing team happy. So I'm the CTO at Netscaper. We are a Microsoft security and compliance partner. Basically, we provide 24/7 eyes on screen via our MXDR services in Amsterdam, Cape Town, Joburg. And we provide Microsoft consultancy services for every Microsoft security product available. Secondly, big thanks to Microsoft Security. So while I was preparing this webinar, Microsoft Security helped me with some validation about the threat actor Storm-1811. So shout out to them. And so let's start. Now, first, let's start with a small disclaimer. I want to explain the difference between antivirus, EDR, XDR. So you will get the context of the attack itself and the remediation steps. So basically, antivirus is a signature-based detection that blocks a threat from happening. EDR looks at behavior. So malicious behavior, so deviations from the baseline, will get detected and get blocked, but it will take some time. It can take minutes, maybe, or even longer. XDR is basically a multi-stage detected attack from multiple sources. For example, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity. But it will show you from a patient zero attack until the complete breach, but it will take more time. Now, an example is, if you install Mimikatz, it will get blocked by the AV detection. If you exclude a folder, download Mimikatz, install Mimikatz, and do execute Mimikatz, then it will be detected by the EDR. And if you Mimikatz, for example, does a DC sync, I will explain the DC sync later, you got your XDR detection. So in time, it takes more time for each type of detection. So keep that in mind. Now, what do we know about Storm-1811? It's a very sophisticated threat actor, financially motivated, likely Russia and state-sponsored. It was first seen starting May 2024. It abuses Quick Assist, and Microsoft puts it in the category groups in development. That's why the name Storm. Now, if you go to the threat analytics part of Microsoft Defender, you also see more information about the threat actor, some TTPs and indicators of compromise, which you can use for early detections. Now, a quick overview of the attack itself. So it starts with an email flood, then somebody gets a Teams message from IT support. They install remote access software via Quick Assist, deploy command and control software, exploit, for example, Active Directory certificate services, and they are domain dominance, meaning they have domain admin permissions, and from there they can deploy the ransomware. Now, this threat actor uses Blackbuster ransomware, and basically it's game over. Keep in mind, this attack happens within 60 minutes. We even saw it around 45 minutes. So that's the time frame from patient zero to the full domain dominance. So let's get in more detail. So the first step is an email spam flood. And what's an email spam flood? It's sending a few hundred email messages in a short time frame, 10 or 20 minutes. It looks like spam, but it isn't spam, because if it was spam, it was supposed to be delivered in the junk folder. This is delivered in the inbox. So the user will see a lot of mails that look like spam. Now, after a few minutes, they get contacted by IT support via Teams. And they tell the user, now, we saw that your spam filter is broken. We would want to help you to fix your spam filter. Now, if you get a lot of email messages, you see somebody from IT support. Now, often the case is that you will fall for the trap and then go with it. I see this also with larger companies, that the IT department is outsourced. So this is what you will see. So you'll get a Teams message. Hello, this is IT support. we want to help you start with Quick Assist. Now, what can we do to prevent, first of all, the Teams message from an external source? Now, if not required, all the 4 recommendations in here should be disabled. So accounts in trial tenants, Skype users, unmanaged Teams accounts, etc., etc. Secondly, by default, Team does allow every domain. So I see more often people allowing certain domains. You can block certain domains. You can allow every domain, etc., etc. It's hard to say what's best for you, but like I said, I see more and more allowing specific domain from your partners, etc. Secondly, user awareness is key because you will see that the IT support is from an external company. So if you got your own IT internal company, that should alert some red flags. And lastly, Microsoft is updating a change that will be deployed this month. And it's called brand impersonation protection for Teams messaging. So if they really want to, supposed to be some other brand, that it will get detected by Teams and blocked. The external Teams message is detected, will be detected by Defender XDR, specifically Defender for Cloud Apps. And the the alert message is suspicious message received in Microsoft Teams from external user. This is an E5 product, Microsoft Defender XDR. If you are an E3 customer with Microsoft Sentinel, you can use this KQL query, for example, to also detect the first contact from the external team message. You need the Microsoft 365 data connector for that. Now, from there, they tell the user, now let's start Quick Assist. Quick Assist is a legitimate Microsoft tool, part of the operating system. So if you start it, we'll give you a code, and with the code, we can take over your computer and assist you with updating your anti-spam filter. Now, as you see in here, within a minute, they have a connection and full access to your computer, basically, and they can deploy any software like command and control software, which we'll show later. Now, it's a little bit harder to prevent. If you don't use it at all, advice is to disable Quick Assist completely. Another option could be block Quick Assist access from the internet, but since everybody is working from home lately, this is not a real solution. And again, user awareness is key because you need to consent to the allow screen sharing part. Also, this part gets detected by Defender XDR. Suspicious activity using Quick Assist. Now, from there, they download a zip file and extract the files and set up command and control via DLL sideloading. Now, what's DLL sideloading, also called living off the land, is a technique to use malicious DLL files in standard Windows executables. So how does it work? Every executables use DLL files with code, and it will use the DLL search order like shown in the presentation. So it will first uses the application directory, and from there it will use the shared directories like System32, System, Windows, current directory, etc., etc. So, for example, if there's an executable or multiple executables that use the same DLL, is often shared in the System32 directory, especially from Microsoft. Now, what we see used by Storm-1811 is the OneDrive standalone updater. First of all, this is a Microsoft executable that runs every 24 hours, so you get persistence. And secondly, it will use, for example, win-http.dll from the System32 directory. So if you see, I use Procmon, process monitor, you will see it will first look in the application directory. Now, there is no DLL with that name there. Then it continues to the System32. The DLL is in there. So if you upload a malicious DLL in the same directory as the executable, you run the executable, it will use the malicious DLL. So that's DLL sideloading. How can we prevent it? It's quite hard, to be honest, because executables can be required to be signed, etc. DLLs are not. From a Microsoft perspective, make sure that your Defender antivirus is running with all the required recommended protection settings like real-time protection, cloud delivered protection, network and tamper protection. Also, there are some recommended ASR rules in block mode, but this doesn't work in the attack we just described because we don't use USB for that, and we abuse Microsoft executables. Basically, have a defense in-depth strategy is key in here. And also, the DLL is loaded in the context of the executable. So if you are local admin, that means that the DLL executable is local admin. So please, no local admin for users if possible. Now, also this attack gets detected by Defender XDR, the DLL sideloading, but keep in mind, every part of the attack is detected by EDR and eventually XDR, but it takes minutes. And the attacker is one step ahead due to the sophistication. Now, a big remediation from this part. So the compromised end user device is the option to isolate the device via Defender XDR. So if you see some anomalies, some things happening on the device, go to the device, select the device and isolate the device. And as you can see, all communication is broken from the device, except, for example, Outlook, so you can still send emails to your real IT department. This can stop the attack and prevent from spreading, so prevent lateral movement. Highly advised. So they got access to your end user workstations. And from there, what we saw is they abuse certain exploits. Now, one exploit is, for example, the ESC8. It's exploiting an insecure Active Directory certificate service, certificate enrollment endpoint. It is abused by an NTLM relay attack, which we'll see later on. And basically, there is a white paper. If you see at the bottom, certificate pre-owned, it describes a lot of vulnerabilities on the Active Directory certificate services, ESC8, ESC4, etc. We'll show more later. But with this exploit, you can become domain admin within a few minutes. And if you are domain admin, you can do a DC sync. And basically, a DC sync is an attacker mimic a domain controller, request user replication, and basically the attacker gets all password hashes from every account in the domain, from your domain admin accounts, Kerberos accounts, user accounts, etc., etc. Now, let's see how the attack works in real. So, let's see if this works. Yeah. So let's first check if we got certificate web enrollment enabled. We do. Now, see what user we have. This is a user with just user permission. So if you try to connect to a domain controller, we will get an access denied. So we got an authenticated users that this attack is starting from. Now, first what we will do is we'll start PowerShell PKI audit. And the PowerShell PKI audit is a tool written to see basically the vulnerabilities on an Active Directory certificate services which can be exploited. So we'll run the tool. And what will you see? You see in here we have misconfigurations on ESC7, ESC8. Now, ESC8 was the NTLM relay attack. And it will also look at the certificate templates, and that's ESC4. So this is a default installation that can be exploited. So from there, let's start our Kali Linux machine. On the left side, start NTLM Relay X. And on the right side, we'll start a proof of concept called Petit Potam. It's a tool to force Windows hosts to authenticate to other machines by the Microsoft Encrypting File System Protocol. So we'll include the domain controller and the ADCS server. So when we execute it, we have on the left, we have the certificate. It's a base 64 string. So let's copy the certificate. And before we continue, let's see that indeed there's a new certificate issued. So going back to the ADCS, we see we have 16 issued certificates. If we press F5, we got 17. So going back to the compromised machine, we'll start with a tool called Rubius. And the nice thing about the Rubius tool, it's from the same authors as the PSPKI audit PowerShell module. So we'll do an ask DGT, user domain controller, the certificate we just compromised, and we do pass the ticket. With that, the ticket was successfully imported. Now we'll start Mitigation. First, we'll get debug permissions. And then we'll do a DC sync. And the DC sync, as you see in here, basically dumps all password hashes from the administrator account, Kerberos DGT account, from which you can do a golden ticket attack. So for now, we will use the administrator account. Let's copy the NTLM hash. And now we'll start a new session in the context of the domain admin. So if you now try to connect to the domain controller, we'll have access because we are domain admin. So this is the attack. And like you saw, it goes really fast. So let's continue to the next slides. Again, prevention is better than the cure. And when I wrote this down, I was looking at the internet. And this sentence is from a Dutch philosopher called Desiderius Erasmus. So I think that was kind of funny. So to protect Active Directory certificate services, my advice is go to the Defender for Identity Security recommendations. It's part of Secure Score, or you can use the newer Microsoft Security Exposure Management tool. As you can see in here, for example, the ESC4 and the ESC8 are part of the security recommendations. There are much more security recommendations which can be exploited, like principal on domain controller, etc., etc. Now, a recommendation, for example, is basically if you don't need the HTTP endpoint, just disable it. Deactivate NTLM and use Kerberos. Quite right now, a little bit more complex, etc., etc. Now, the good thing about Microsoft Defender XDR. Oh. 1 second. It will detect the whole attack from patient 0 to domain dominance. But again, time is critical. So this is within 60 minutes. So you really need to have a 24/7 SOC with preferably eyes on screen to prevent this from spreading. Another thing that might help you is Defender XDR automatic attack disruption. So one of the automatic attack disruptions are humor, this human operator ransomware. Basically, it's somebody behind the keyword, like we saw in here, doing the ransomware deployment. Now, what do you need? Defender for Endpoint configured with the device groups and Defender for Identity configured with action accounts. And what it can do, if it sees the attacks, it can contain the device or contain the user. Now, containing device is that the device which is compromised cannot communicate with another Microsoft Defender for Endpoint device. It's different than the device isolation, which we saw via the manual action. That will basically isolate the device from communicating to other devices in general. So we got device containment and device isolation. And if this triggers, you will see attack disruption in the incident name. One thing to keep in mind, if you start a manual remediation in the chain of the attack disruption will not work because it will see that something already is being detected and being prevented. Another last thing that's interesting in the Storm-1811 attack, that it targets the break glass account in the Active Directory. So the break glass account in the Active Directory is often the account that created the Active Directory with full permissions. Now, my advice is always rename the administrator account to something else. Now, why? If something is connected to the internet from an Active Directory perspective, If they brute force, 99% they will use the administrator account name and then a password list. So if you rename the account, it's a little bit less, more safe, less risk. Secondly, if they are inside the domain, as we saw, then it doesn't matter what the name is, because via WMIC, you will see the SID, and the domain admin always ends with the 500 from the break glass account. Now, my advice with this account is, if you got Microsoft Defender for Identity, there's a feature called Honey Token. And Honey Token basically is add a fake user that's supposed to be an admin account. If that account is used, you will get an alert in the SOC. Now, what I would do, abuse this feature at your break glass account, because basically nobody should use it. Everybody has a named account, and applications use application accounts. So if this account is used, I want to have an alert. So if you add it to the Honey Token part of Defender for Identity, you will get an alert for when the account is used. Though that will help also slowing down, preventing the attack itself. With that, I know I'm fast. This was the attack of the Storm-1811 and some detections, preventions, etc. So I will slowly go to the chat to see if there are any questions. Let's see. I don't see any question at the moment. Are there any questions? Or people are shy, or I did a good job? You can still hear me, right? So if there are no questions left, basically, thank you all for attending. If you got questions in the future, yeah, you know where you can find me. And yeah, again, thanks again for attending, and see you on our next webinar. It will be recorded and it will be shared on YouTube in the coming days. True. Thank you, Malus. All right. Bye all.